Hello friends, and welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new here. If you are new here, my name is Carrie. I'm a TV host and I live in Kansas City, Missouri. I just made myself a fresh iced coffee in my Royals mug, of course, go Royals. And I am here to chat with you and tell you about all the books I read in the month of February. I have to admit that February is my least favorite month of all the months that ever did month. Like, I know, oh, thank you, sir, thank you. Casey, my husband, was teaching him how to paw the other day. So I think that's why he did that. You're so smart. You're so smart. Like I was saying, I just don't like February. It is the shortest month, but by far it just drags. There's nothing that happens in February, in my opinion. It's a dead zone for sports. Like, NBA playoffs haven't started yet. NCAA March Madness hasn't started yet. Like, it's just a lot of blah. So I don't have a lot of good things to say about February. I read 6 books in the month of February, which is decent, but compared to January when I read 11 books, it's a lot less. That being said, in January, I wasn't as busy. I was between jobs, and like I had a lot more free time, and I spent a lot of that free time reading. I also, I think, took in 2 or 3 audiobooks in January, which padded my numbers a lot. I didn't listen to a single audiobook in February, so this was all books that I just read. In February, I started a brand new job, which has been really fun and exciting, but there's been a lot of a learning curve, so I have just not had as much extra time to read during the day. But then at night, I'm usually pretty tired, so when I would get into bed in January and read for like an hour and a half, like now I get into bed and I'm exhausted for my day, so I read for like a half hour or 45 minutes at the most. So because of life reasons, I just didn't get to as many books this month. That being said, let's talk about the ones that I did read. The first book that I read in the month of February is called Glossy: Ambition, Beauty, and the Inside Story of Emily Weiss's Glossier. I actually just picked this up at the library on a whim. I saw it sitting there and I was like, this looks interesting, why don't I read it? So I did just that. I have a lot of mixed feelings about this book. The story of Emily Weiss and Glossier is fascinating and really incredible, and like, so hearing about that story was great, but some of the times I think the author interjected her own personal feelings a little too much, and sometimes I felt like she was tooting Emily Weiss's horn so much about what she built. It was like, this is great, she did this is amazing, she built this wonderful thing, blah, blah, blah. And then like 2 sentences later, she would be talking mad shit about her. And it was kind of giving like big sister vibes. Like, I can talk crap about my little sister, but no one else can talk crap about my little sister type of thing. So it was hard for me to understand where she was coming from a lot of the times. I was like, is this an expose or like a smear piece, or is it like a declaration of genius? Like, I could not tell. It was one and then it was the other like 2 seconds later. So while at times I found the information she was sharing interesting, the way in which she shared it and the way in which she crafted this story was strange to me. At its best, I could only give this book like 2.5 stars. Every time I would maybe start to get closer to the 3-star range, like she would do something or say something in like the next chapter and I would be like, nope, we're back to 2. We're back to 2. The second book I read is called None of This Is True by Lisa Jewell. I completely forgot, but I actually did mostly listen to this on audiobook. I've been on hold for this book at the library for a while, and I'm basically like hold 156 million of like 156 million. So I'm not getting it anytime soon. So when I saw that it was offered for free on Spotify Premium, I'm like, okay, I'll listen to it. Well, I listened to approximately like 95% of it, and then the last 3 chapters, my Spotify Premium account goes, you are out of your audio credits for audiobooks for this month. You'll get more credits in 2 weeks. And I was like, I can't wait 2 weeks. Like, I had 3 chapters left. Like, shit was getting real. So actually what I did is I drove to a bookstore. I found this book on the shelf, I sat my butt down and I read the last 3 chapters at the bookstore. This book is extremely popular, so I'm sure you know the synopsis, but I'm gonna give you just the quick and dirty. Our main characters are Josie and Alex. Alex is a podcaster, a decently successful podcaster, and Josie kind of recognizes her out one night at her birthday dinner. They run into each other in the bathroom and they find out that they have the same birthday, and they strike up a conversation. They then run into each other a couple days later, and Josie approaches Alex and is like, I've listened to your podcast and I think I would be a good guest to have on. Alex is kind of like, okay, why not? So she starts meeting with Josie to interview her for the podcast. And as they get to know each other and as the podcast kind of keeps going, it becomes a tangled web of things, if you will. So the experience of reading this book was a 5 out of 5, for sure. I could not stop listening to this book. The audiobook was extremely well done. I was at the edge of my seat and I didn't want to stop listening. But I have some critiques. My number one critique is that I hate the name of this book. This book should have been named like Birthday Twin or something like that. Like, just this title is bad. Bad, bad, bad. As a reader, I struggle a lot with unreliable narrators because you've got this whole story, you've read 200 pages of how things are, and then you get to page 201 or whatever it is, and the author is like, and this person who's been telling you that is completely insane and out of their mind and none of it's true. And it's like, pardon? Why did I just listen to all that for X amount of pages then? Like, I've read other books with unreliable narrators and they've really frustrated me. So I don't like that plot line, that like way that a book is laid out. So we were battling with that the entire time, where we're just like, is this lady telling the truth or is she full of shit? My second critique, like to sum it up, is that I think that the ending fell short. Another thing I really struggle with as a reader, especially someone who reads a lot of thrillers, is that I really don't like when there are a lot of like subplot lines brought in to thicken the plot, and then it does just that, it thickens the plot, but then at the end, none of those plot lines are wrapped up cohesively. So the reader is just left there being like, okay, well, what about XYZ? And we're just wondering about it. And that, to me, as a reader, is annoying. I won't go into specifics because that would be spoilers, but just believe me when I say there was a lot of that in this book. The ending was also very open-ended, in my opinion, which is not unlike Lisa Jewell. I think this leaves space for her to write a sequel, kind of like she did a la The Family Upstairs and The Family Remains. Like, those are two like tandem books. I see a space for her to do that again. Maybe that's her long game. But if this is just a like single standing book by itself, then the ending that she gave is not good enough, in my opinion. Overall, I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars. Like I said before, the experience of reading it was 5 out of 5. I was so into it, didn't want to stop, I was engrossed. But by the time I got to the end, kind of sat with things, processed things, like the most I could realistically give it because of all of my critiques was 4 out of 5 stars. The next book I read in February is Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. This book came highly recommended to me by my best friend Bree because I have coined 2024 the year that I try fantasy and romantasy type books. I have not dipped my toes in that genre, but I am curious. You know, I have not read ACOTAR, I have not read Crescent City, I have not read Throne of Glass, I haven't read any of those. But I am a bookish girl, and so they are interesting to me, and I want to try. I want to see what all the fuss is about. But I also don't want to be dropped off in the deep end of the pool, if you know what I mean. So she thought that this would be a good way to dip my toes in, this book, and then there's another book after that that I'm gonna read probably in March. But I started with Divine Rivals. So this book is romance, fantasy, but also historical fiction vibes. Our main characters are Roman and Iris, and they are young journalists, and they are rivals, obviously, at like a media outlet that is covering a war that is going on between two gods. And they're really competing for the same position at this newspaper. As I'm sure you are not surprised, they eventually fall in love. I think Bree is correct in that this is a good entryway into fantasy, if that's a genre you're looking to get into. There is some world building and there is some magic elements, but not too out there, if that makes sense. This really read like a screenplay to me at times. I think this would be a really good book to be adapted into like a short series or 2 movies. It was giving Divergent. Like, I was picturing the Divergent series in my head as I was reading this. Like, it was giving those vibes a lot. I ended up giving this 4 out of 5 stars. There's a reason why I can't give it 5, and I will tell you, but it's a spoiler. So if you do not want to be spoiled for this book, click away now. Okay, so the reason I couldn't give this 5 stars is because I thought it was so random that Iris and Roman got married. I did not see that as necessary. I think that they could get married, that's fine, if it furthers the plot, the storyline, and like sets things up or like ties things together more. Like, I can see that, but I don't think that that happened. Like, maybe it will in the next book and I will eat my words, but with this book, them getting married does not like further the plot or thicken the plot or change anything at all. Like it was just random to me. In fact, I really think that they only had them get married so that there could be some kind of like sex scene, because without them getting married, there wasn't any of that, which is fine by me. The book was good enough without that. I didn't need that, but I felt like they wanted it to be in there so that there could be like sexy time. And it's like, okay, well, that doesn't really further the plot or the story at all. So it wasn't necessary in my opinion. So for that reason, I could not give it 5 stars. I gave it 4 stars. But overall, really enjoyed, and I'm excited to read the second book. The next book that I tried to read but had to DNF is The Fury by Alex Michaelides. I don't know how you say his last name. I always get it wrong. Nevertheless, I really like him as an author. I have read his other books, The Silent Patient and The Maidens, and I enjoyed them both. I rated them both really highly. So I was excited about this book. I got about 50 pages into this book, and not only was I not interested, but the narrator, the person who was like telling us the story, actively annoyed me, and I wanted to punch him in the face. He just, every time he spoke and said things, I was like, shut up. Like he was very unlikable, and I wasn't really gravitating towards any of the other characters. Granted, it was only 50 pages, but a lot of times 50 pages is my threshold. If I'm not grabbed by that point, I can still give it like 75 to 100 pages if there is still a little bit of curiosity. But if I'm 50 pages in and I actively dislike the main character, the narrator, the person who's telling the story, like then I think I'm just gonna like give myself the gift of DNFing it. I do think that maybe it was just like the wrong book, the wrong time for me, honestly. There's a chance that I try and pick this up at a later date because like I said, I've read his other books and I do enjoy his books. But this was not it. I could not bring myself to read this book. The next book I read is The Housemaid's Secret by Freida McFadden. This is the second book and the follow-up to The Housemaid, also by Freida McFadden. Millie is back. She is trying to get a job as a maid. Working. She's struggling to get jobs because she has a complicated past, but she finds a rich man and his wife who will pay her to kind of do some errands and clean their house and things like that. And she slowly but surely gets to know the wife and realizes things aren't what they seem. She gets concerned for the wife and kind of tries to step in and help, but that leads her astray as well, and we kind of take the story from there. I gave this book 3 stars, and one of the big reasons why I gave it 3 stars is because after, not finishing The Fury, I was really kind of feeling myself about to start like book slumping, which is an awful feeling. I hate being in a book slump. And Freida's books always pull me out of a book slump. They are the antithesis of a book slump because they move so quickly. They have short chapters. They have a lot of dialogue. They have main characters that like are complicated and have a lot of things going on. So like, this book pulled me out of almost a book slump, which I really, really am thankful for. So I did like this and it moved quickly. I flew through this book, thank goodness. But I could only give it 3 stars because, like I said, this was so similar to her first book, and I felt like there wasn't like a ton of growth from our main character, Millie. I still like Millie. I think she's a likable character, but I think that there could have been a lot more done with her story. We could have really seen another level of her complicated past and why she is the way she is. Like I felt like this was a chance for her to show us another side of Millie or another version of why she's ended up in this position, but really it was just like kind of a regurgitation of The Housemaid, in my opinion. So this was, it was what it was. I was definitely let down and disappointed that there wasn't more originality in this one. The next book I read is The Fine Print by Lauren Asher. This is the first book in the Dreamland Billionaires series. There's 2 other books in this series for a total of 3 books. This is the first one, Borrowed to Me by Brie. Thank you so much, Brie. Our main characters in this are Zara and Rowan. Rowan is the heir to a billion-dollar fortune, obviously, and one of the avenues of the billions of dollars that they have is that they have this theme park, and it's like Disneyland, basically, is what it is. It's in Florida. It's called Dreamland, but obviously it's like an ode to Disneyland is what they're getting at. And he is trying to revive the park and figure out where there are flaws and where things can be done differently. He kind of has to do that in order to get his inheritance from his father, not his father, his grandfather that passed away. And Zara is someone who works there, and he promotes her because he feels like she's really creative and can help him get the park back on track and like find that tangible thing that's missing and make sure he gets his money, his inheritance. So he hires her, and slowly but surely, as he gets to know her through his trying to revamp the park, he falls in love with her. She kind of hates him for a little bit, but she kind of likes him. Like, it's kind of that trope. He's kind of grumpy, curmudgeon, and she's like sunshiny, like everything's great, life is fun, blah, 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 blah. My biggest gripe with this book is that I felt like Zara was written very juvenilely. As I was reading it and getting to know her, I liked her, but she read, in my opinion, as like a 19, 20, 21-year-old. And in the book, I think she's 25. So I was having a hard time seeing her and Rowan as being equals, because to me, he read as like a 28, 29, 30-year-old, and she read as a 19, 20, 21-year-old, which is a little gross to me, honestly. So I wasn't seeing them match up in that way. This book has a decent amount of spice, but it's all at the back end of the book. So for example, from pages 0 to 250, the most we get in terms of spice is a kiss. Not even like a makeout, just a kiss. So it's like a lot of buildup of nothing. And then all of a sudden you hit page like 250 and it's like, there'd be a lot going on, like a lot of freaky deaky stuff, which is fine. But to me, it went from PG to R. Like we didn't stop at PG-13 in the middle at all. It just went from PG, skipped over PG-13 and went to R. And so to me, that was like a little awkward in terms of the flow of the book. Overall, this was a 3-star read for me. I have heard that this series gets better as it goes along. The first book is okay, the second book is better, and then I have heard that the third book is really phenomenal. So I'm excited to keep reading it and to see how it ends. The other books are about the other brothers. There's 3 brothers, so Rowan was the first one, and then the second book will get the next brother, and the third book, the last brother. The last book that I read in February was my favorite by far. It's called On Our Best Behavior, The 7 Deadly Sins and the Price Women Pay to Be Good. It's by Elise Lunan. I became familiar with Elise through Goop. She was a top executive at Goop for a long time. She hosted the Goop podcast with Gwyneth, and then she also was a part of like the series they did on Netflix. So every chapter in the book is one of the 7 deadly sins, and she lays out how we are, as women, taught in society and in different ways by our upbringings, by culture, by everything around us, that these things are sins, bad, and that we need to be good, in order to be seen in society as good women, kind women, hardworking women, smart women, selfless women. Like, she goes through them all. So the first chapter especially, she talks a lot about, relates it to motherhood, and I found a lot in that really spoke to me. And I'm not a human mother. I'm an animal mother, you guys know that, but I'm not a human mother. But a lot of what she talked about and a lot of what she intellectualized is why I have fears and trepidations about being a human mother, because of all of the different things that are put on us as women. And it's frustrating and confusing and so hard and just not fair. I don't know. I don't want to get too worked up, honestly, but it's a really great book. I really recommend this if it sounds interesting to you, if you're a feminist, or if you're interested in this topic. I really think you'll like this. I think it was really well done, and I think she did a really good job, and I'm gonna subscribe to her podcast. Like I said, I have not followed her much since she left Goop, because that's how I came to know her, but I have since resubscribed to her podcast, and I think she has a newsletter also, and I think she's writing another book too, because this one was a New York Times bestseller, rightfully so. It was just really well done, and I really enjoyed it. So that was my favorite book of the month. I gave it 5 stars, much deserved, and I think I'm gonna buy myself a copy, because it's a book that I liked enough that I think I will wanna re-reference it. And you guys know I'm picky about the books that I buy, but I really do think that this one deserves a spot on my shelf. That's gonna do it for my book recap for the month of February. If you read a really banging book in February, put it down in the comments below, because I am always looking for more recommendations. And make sure you subscribe, because I am gonna do these videos once a month. Thank you so much for joining me. I am sending you love wherever you are in the world. Mwah. I'm so grateful for you, and I will see you again very soon in my next video. Bye. Books are fun. You should read them. And subscribe to my mom's channel, please.